Hello, everybody. Thank you for making it, despite the threat of rain. I think we have a quorum, so thank you all for coming. We have a short agenda, but there's a lot on item 3. So I'll call the meeting to order. The minutes were sent out, the April 6th, very fulsome April 6th, 2022 minutes were sent out. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to them? Yeah, I mean, they were sent with several attachments. They are very lengthy, so I'll give you the time, Wilmot, to look them over.
I looked over them on the phone yesterday and saw that the documents continue to refer to those persons held in bondage as slaves. In a prior meeting, we had discussed changing that wording to slavery. As in the title on side 1, slavery and trading complex. On side 2, slavery and trading complex. Removal of the term slave pen to enslavement pen. And I wanted to make sure that these corrections were made. Otherwise, the commission would be suborning calumny, which is a defamation of a group of people pretending that in some way or another they were subhuman. And I think that that would be to the commission's detriment and to the detriment of the city as well.
It's a valid point. I do have to say that, you know, this is what that's Wilmot, you're talking about what we did at 2 meetings ago, I think.
Yes.
Right? And then we sent it back to the state archives. This is the edits that we wanted. They sent it back slightly edited. They did not take all the edits. And as I remember, it'll probably say in there, I don't think it was a unanimous vote of the meeting, but they did pass as they are in the minutes.
As I said, for some reason, I wasn't aware of that meeting or was unable to attend it. And because of that, I thought we had dealt with it, voted on it when we sent it back to them. So it is not our doing, it's the insistence of someone from somewhere else who wants to put up a sign in the city of Charleston denigrating African-American people. And that doesn't sit well with me. Denmark Vesey didn't accept it in 1822, the designation of slave. And I don't think we should be even considering accepting those kinds of designations in 2022. From anywhere, whether it comes from Columbia or Washington, wherever. This is Charleston.
Mickey. Right. Yeah, I think you pushed the green button.
And we made those changes, which apparently they were sent to Columbia, according to Harlan, and then returned here with the same calendar.
Mickey, if you push the green button, if you push the button on this and your light turns green, you can see the one. Then we can take. Okay. That's right. You got it.
I know we discussed it, but I thought that was the a name of something that you couldn't very well say the enslaved people complex. I mean, we tossed it around.
Sure. Right. We said enslavement complex. That's what we passed back to the people.
It was debated, and I will say that the state archives probably took about 90% of our suggestions, but they did not take all. Okay. And when it came up for debate, the debate was possible for us, and I'll recognize you in a second, Peg, to change it. And they did take it out, I say 90% of the time. I think they kept it in the title. Peg?
As I recall, we were talking about also writing, and that it didn't, that saying enslavement, 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 enslavement was not only taking up more things on a very small thing, but it is not good writing. And I think that was part of the discussion. And that you cannot use one word 100 times on anything if you're going to have it properly written. And I say that as an editor and a writer. And thank you for letting me share.
Mr. Chairman, the question before us is approval of the minutes. And I might just suggest that we go ahead and accept the minutes, but with the understanding that any member can present a motion to amend something that we have completed in the past, and that it be given full consideration. And if the wording is changed on these plaques or any other, that we would submit that to the archives with officially from the commission as being a recommended change, and it could include everything that Wilmot has said.
Well, thank you for the fine points of parliamentary procedure for which I am not polished on. So I do think, Wilmot, what we have before us, what Dale was basically saying, the issue we have before us right now is just whether we approve these minutes as being correct.
Because they contain and refer to my ancestors as slaves. They did not accept that. They fought against it. They overthrew it. And there's no reason why we should be sitting here accepting it in a document out of this commission in 2022. If repetition does not permit the same word to be used, certainly not 100 times because the text isn't that long, but certainly repetition is simply a technical issue rather than an issue of content, and certainly not to be favored against insults and degradation of an entire group of people who were wrongfully, and I insist, wrongfully held in bondage. And that kind of wrong must be articulated in any text which I'm willing to approve.
I hear your feeling, and I feel you're strong, and I hear your strength and your passion for it. But it was.
And I would
right.
follow Dale's suggestion
Right.
and move immediately that all references to slave pen, slave trading complex be changed to enslavement complex, or enslavement trading complex, and enslavement pen. The repetition of that term, I think, should begin to excuse me. The repetition of the term should call the reader's attention to the fact that this was an act of enslavement occurring in the past, not a designation of a group of people as subhuman.
All right, so I think following Dale's point, so I think the way to navigate this is we just have to say if this is a record of what we decided last meeting, and then if you want to bring that up, I think that's one before us that we can have a motion to do that. And then, Wilmot, if you would like to make a motion that the language be amended and it be sent back to Columbia, then we can vote on that.
Yes, with a note indicating that the commission considers it calendar.
Right, so the initial item on the agenda is approval of the minutes as presented. Do people see any changes or corrections as they're presented? If not, I would ask for a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Second? Any debate? So can we call for a vote to accept the minutes as presented? Aye. Okay.
Nay.
Okay, so then Wilmot, did you want to take the floor next?
I've pretty much taken the floor
Right.
and said what I had to say regarding this, but I would present a motion to the commission that the word slave designating a group of people held wrongfully in bondage as slave should be excised from the text and replaced with the term enslavement, which indicates that these people were being wrongfully deprived of their human rights. In this context, in the context in which the sign, that activity existed.
Okay, any discussion?
I would propose that be written out, not just in the form of a motion, but an explanation and justification as to why the folks in Columbia should make the change. And I think it'd be pretty well received if it's written out in a somewhat formal letter.
I'll just say for the sake of discussion that while you disagree with the word Wilmot slave, if you actually read the text itself, it does not leave any doubt within the text itself that slavery was wrong. And that to me is the entire message of the plaque. Whereas, I think there's the whole equal more than the sum of the parts. And I think if you read the text of the plaques themselves, you realize that they are certainly basically talking about the cruelties of slavery and the injustices of slavery. And the only other thing that I'll put in for discussion, since this was approved, it might be, it may have already been, the die literally might have already been cast. Since this was approved a month ago and the state archives was, informed of that, the plaque may already have been made. So I'm just saying that to throw that in there for information purposes. Okay, so any more discussion? To Peg.
I would like some clarification. Who has the final word on what's done here in Charleston or up in Columbia?
We do.
Exactly.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and y'all need to help me on this to your point, and I think your point's something we need to take into serious consideration as you advocate for this word change. Is there and this is just sort of a clarification more than anything else, folks were enslaved.
People were enslaved.
People were enslaved.
Yeah.
And the term slavery versus people being enslaved is an important distinction that you've adequately and clearly defined. The wording in here that talks about a complex. So the complex is not enslaved. It's just the term, it's identifying a complex with a word. And I'm just asking, do we use the word slave complex or enslaved complex? And I think that sort of, the people were enslaved, but the object, the building, the location I was not enslaved.
The term, the first word on the sign is slave. The initial word on this plaque, proposed plaque, is slave. My motion is to change that word to enslavement trading complex, as it describes that a commercial activity was taking place here in which attempted to enslave people. Not that a group of people known as slaves and subhumans were being traded, which this wording implies.
Mr. Chairman, I walked by there the other day because I wanted to see it for myself. And on the building is the word "The Mart." And perhaps we could compromise and put what is there. The Carolog did a nice little write-up of where that sign came from and how it got to be there. And that's what it's called. And frankly, I found it disconcerting to see "The Mart" on the wall, having sat in these discussions. It's just a thought.
So trying to be the parliamentarian, we have a motion before us, further articulated by Dale Teeling, saying that you were suggesting, Dale, that it be a much more formal letter following this rather than just this motion.
Yes, sir. And the reason for that is so far we've been responding to the archives folks, but now we're asking them to do something. There's a difference.
Right. So, but I'm just curious if you're right. You're not basically amending what Wilmot had put forward. You're basically just saying it should be delivered in a certain way.
In no way trying to amend it. We still have to vote on the motion.
Right. So if there's any more discussion, if we can have a vote on, and the motion is that this body notify the state archives that changing the word, I want to be precise, the title does say slave. Where it says slave mart, it is in quotation marks, or slave pen, that's in quotation marks. Is it also problematical on the very bottom line? It says sponsored by Old Slave Mart Museum, City of Charleston. I think that is its technical name as well.
That is the actual name of the institution, which pre-existed the city becoming a part of it. That is something we also need to review, I believe, but that's not before the commission at this moment.
Okay, but I mean, the word slave does appear on the very bottom, the very last line of text. And again, I just want to be clear. So anyway, so to make it more generic, to basically say that the resolution before us, the motion before us is to notify the archives that we would ask that they, every time the word slave is used, to change it to enslavement.
Enslaved, right.
Enslaved or enslavement
we're talking about a group of people who were being acted upon wrongfully.
Right.
We're not talking about a group of people who were in fact slaves. And we need to get that concept in the minds of people needs to be straightened out, and very, very clearly. We can't be putting up signs in 2022 that designates a group of people as slaves. Every time a Black child walks past one of those signs, they are designated a part of an inferior caste. And that can't stand.
Okay, so thank you. Any more discussion?
Yeah.
Can we have a vote?
Work too hard for
Right.
Work too hard to make the society a better place.
Right.
To turn back now. Yeah.
Those in favor, say aye or raise their hands. Those opposed? I mean, and I'll just say the reason for my thing is I think they tried valiantly with language, and I do think the text actually fights that. But did that carry? So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 abstain and one nay. Okay. So do you want to write do you want to give us something formal that we can send to them ASAP? That'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next, so we've got the approval of the minutes done. Thank you, folks. And the next one is the Carr Richardson Park historical information. We've got people to present. Does anyone want to present? We've got the information for us, but if someone would like to give us an oral presentation of what's here, we'd love to hear it. Not to put anyone on the spot, but just want to say you're more than welcome to just, Yeah, if you can use a microphone, that way it can be recorded and then the minutes can be done.
Good evening to all. My name is Marcia Higgins, and I am president of the Maryville Ashleyville Neighborhood Association. And what we have before you this evening is the history information about the town of Maryville and some people of the town of Maryville that will be displayed on the Carr Richardson Park. Many of you may already know that the Carr Richardson Park is already under construction. It's located in the Ashleyville community on Bender Street, and the target date for completion is the second quarter of this year. So that's along July, during that time. We put this information together, Chairman Green, and worked on it for quite some time. It was given to the city staff. They received it in February of 2022. And I'm so sorry it was a delay getting to you, but we completed it because we wanted your feedback. And for those of you who have seen it, some of it is pretty long. And we understand that it would be reviewed and you would give your feedback and suggestions of how we might be able to revise it to make it more presentable. As I said, this information will be presented on the park in the form of markers and displays. In our presentation, we gave you all of the information, the history information that will be presented. That's our recommendation. We also gave you a file of displays for each history item. We went around to waterfront parks in the Charleston area, Mount Pleasant, James Island, to get ideas of what these parks have done and how they display their information. And so we kind of use that as a guide. Now, we do understand that that will cost money to display this historical information. We have discussed that with Mayor Tecklenburg and also Beth Brownlee, who is the project manager for the park. We have a meeting with Beth Brownlee and park officials on June the 14th to talk about the financial part of it. And we were told that, of course, the park has been budgeted. And according to Mayor Tecklenburg, there was no separate budget for the historical information and then the park. All of it was together. And so they're going to look at what is left from the construction of the park and whatever's left, and that would be available for our use. As a group, we have discussed ways that we might be able to raise funds if we need to, and reaching out to our community, reaching out to friends of our community and former residents of our community to raise funds. Of course, we need to know how much we will actually have to raise. That's the missing factor right there, if anything. And so that's a part of it. We do give special thank you to Rebecca Hopkins with Neighborhood Services. We did all of the writing of the information and we took all of the pictures and all of that. But ask her if she would please put it in a format where it would be very easy for you to read and to follow. So the file you have, the first file is the historical information, and the second file is our recommendation of how the information should be displayed. I'm not sure if I mentioned that the name of the park will be the Carr Richardson Park, named for Thomas Tobias Carr, the last mayor of the town of Maryville, and Mr. Clement Richardson, who was the first president of our neighborhood association. Matter of fact, he kind of founded the organization and got it all together and worked very hard as the first president. And so it's named for those two people.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer. Some of the folks who actually wrote up the information are here tonight, so they can hear, your feedback and any suggestions you might have. Okay, thank you.
Well, it's great seeing Maryville getting its due attention. So y'all may on the commission not be aware of a recent book that came out on Maryville. The Preservation Society carries it. Maryville, The Audacity of a People, Diane Hamilton, who's right there with us. So maybe you'll get to sign this. But yeah, and I brought my copy here. But anyway, so thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you all that worked for this incredible amount of information. And it's almost an embarrassment of riches. And I do think there are a number of ways that we can proceed. I would love to hear your input as well. But since we do not know the final format and the final word length, I think that if we approved everything here, we would no doubt have to come back and change it at some point. So my suggestion, possibly the way to proceed, is following what you said, Ms. Higgins, is basically to give recommendations as to maybe the best way to proceed, so that when, it's funny, you don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg, the format or the text. We don't know how many words are going to be. And this is often, this is something that we struggle with all the time, is try to get as much information, to the public with the smallest amount of words, because words equal money. I will just say, and I think when we talked on the phone, Ms. Higgins, you said that you had listened, or, when we changed the Judge Fields plaque, we had suggested that we put the important stuff up first, and if that's okay to proceed that way. I did actually just do some numbering, and I did some word numbering and stuff. And just for a suggestion to maybe to start, the Judge Fields plaque, which was approved, a bronze plaque, which is probably going to be several hundred, if not $1,000 or so to do, that only had 216 words. The enslavement mark plaques that we just talked about, each side has about 100 words. And then last time we also approved, a plaque for the workhouse, which is, basically a large sort of tabletop kind of thing. That only has 360 words. Where I did go through this, the Thomas Tobias Carr Sr. has 428 words. The Mr. Richardson Sr. has 450 words. The Mary Richardson Bowen Taft Gettings has, for some reason, I could not format that one to get that, but the Mary Matthews Just has over 1,000 words. And like I said, it's an embarrassment of riches. And the Mary Ellen Green Carr has 370 words, which is close to it. And the history of Maryville itself has 820 words, approximately. So I hate the fact that money actually is going to determine how many words get put out, the format. I think there are numbers of ways to proceed. The city can do bronze plaques, the city can do, painted on wood, but it's just my thought, and I'd love to hear your voices rather than mine, commissioners, that maybe we proceed with suggestions about how to resubmit so that when the city does come up with the format, we will be very close. We have an idea of, of what it will be. So then when it does come up, we can streamline this and go forward. Council member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And 2 points. One is, aren't we also erecting a monument to, I forgot his name, Dr.
Just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to be part of this package as well. No, yes. And I'd like to hear from my colleague, Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Waring, myself, and Councilmember Saccharin all have a part of Maryville, Ashleyville. So we're all very much involved in this process. So I appreciate Councilmember Waring being here this afternoon.
Right. And I love seeing about your father in the Maryville book.
I want to thank everybody that's working on this. I was 2 years ago. One reason in the budget that Brown and Jason for construction on this. When the city went to bid on this, we didn't have the history at that time. So that could not have been bid on to be a part of the budget. That's something that's going to have to be brought forward to mayor and council, my colleagues from council. But I think in some cases in the interior building, today they did it as opposed to printing on a plaque. Obviously outside with flat screens of today, maybe some of the where it is challenging and you have to push a button and go to the screen. So that's one thing that I think brings forward us to people in the community. Technology can help. Now, the paper, that's something that can be so good for the mayor and city council. And the money did too.
That's great.
So I think when it comes to the wording, I don't know how that works with this commission, but the history of the people are known. We like Richardson back, Richardson is a big problem. We just have to go out, councilman, and in terms of a waterfront park, any of you all have not been there, it has the absolute best view of Charleston land, unless you're in Charleston. Straight across the panoramic view of the school is currently more than Charleston. There's a lot of history there. Brownlee is looking at construction. Probably nil. We have not appropriated nothing to say what do we want to do? We did most of it. So that is the principle. And how to pay for it, hopefully we all recommend council.
That's great. That's comforting to hear. But I do think, yes, ma'am. Oh, please. And if you'll identify yourself for the record, so, yeah.
I spent the past 12 years researching my neighborhood. I learned all of these things that I did not know growing up. I know we keep saying, Richardson Park, yes, it's a park, but it's actually more than just a traditional park. We are looking at this and we've been working on it for many years now. We're just starting after the full and we are looking at this as an opportunity for not only the persons who live in Maryville, Ashleyville, but the entire Charleston area, the United States, to add to or to complete the history of Charleston, and also to be a way of making our history known outside our area. And so we want this for future generations. So it's not just a park, thank you. It's not just a park, but it's a way to preserve our history and to pass it on for the future as well. And when we originally looked upon this task, we were envisioning opportunities for persons who come up to the exterior of the building to be able to learn something and to see the connection between Maryville and the founding of Charleston and the city of Charleston. We also wanted the interior, as Councilman Waring stated, to have opportunities. And I like the idea of digital. I love the idea of the technology. Inside for those who are able to go inside. So please look beyond just a park. This is more to us and more to Charleston than just a park. Thank you.
Yep, Donna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Donna Jacobs. I wanted to speak technically to signage and wording for y'all tonight. I visited the little museum in St. Augustine called Lincolnville Cultural Center. They have a digital exhibit, very much like the one that Councilman Member Waring spoke of. And there was this opportunity that wasn't limited by words. I think it's going to be very hard to digest those down and make it even educational in words. Also, I've been working closely with the International African American Museum on some settlement community exhibits, and there are no word limits to part of the exhibit at all. It depends on what part of the exhibit you're in. With these interpretive signs that are physical structures in the park, it depends on the signage. We've been working with some of those for the Greenway, and the word limit is not as constricted as if you're having an engraved plaque as if you spoke. That would depend on design of the plaque, how much space was given to the words. So if I can be so bold as to suggest, if the committee would vet the information so that when it came time to choose the type of sign based on the budget that the city had, all of the information would have been vetted instead of us crafting words right now. And that way the signage type that was brought forward would have all the information to choose from instead of a limited information, because a lot of extensive work has been done here. And micro editing we're not at that level like before.
Right.
So I just wanted to give that feedback about the technicality of signage, because I've been working on that even as of this morning. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? No, I think anyone else wanting to speak, and as we go on, if people want to address issues that we're bringing up, I think that it's a point very well made, Donna. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Althea Richardson Latham. Clement Richardson was my father. All that I ask is that with the signage, that the history needs to come from the family. Nobody knew more about Daddy than we did. I think I can't remember walking without him putting us to work, carrying, voting, street improvement, paving the streets, this, that, and the other. We weren't paid. We laugh about it now because he said, child labor before he passed away. You worked us, but he did love the village. I've known you a long time, but and of course, I used to spank him, but but that's all I ask, that when we redo
Right.
the word is that we have input in it.
Right.
But, I've loved everything I've heard so
I mean,
far.
I think we all agree that y'all are certainly the experts. And I think one thing that this commission can offer, and do you want to speak more, Ms. Clark?
I just wanted to add to what Althea said. When the information was compiled, the people who wrote it up, for instance, Althea wrote the information up about her father. Della could not be here this evening. She's working. She was the granddaughter of Thomas Tobias Carr. And she wrote that information up about Thomas Tobias Carr and Mary Ellen Green Carr. And the family gave input into it. So, and Diane was involved. She wrote up the information about the history, because she had already done that with her book. I won't tell you how many pages she gave me the first time. I had to give it back to her and say, that's too long. But anyhow, so we try to capture the history from those who actually knows most about it. And so when it's read, you could actually feel, the knowledge and the information that was provided. So we did select people to write it up who knew most about it and was more dedicated to that particular subject.
I mean, I certainly agree, as I was saying, and forgive me, my side vision is not particularly good. So if someone's coming up and I don't see you, please interrupt me. I think y'all are obviously the authorities. I think what this commission can do is, we can maybe be editors to some extent because of our experience with, trying to get text out. And I'll take a riff from what you were saying, Ms. Hamilton, is that the story of Maryville needs to be told to the world and not just to the people in Maryville. And, with my editorial glasses on there, I do think a lot of this information, it should all lead with the importance of Maryville, and I think y'all know so many of the things that fit in between the sentences that, that complete strangers that know nothing about Maryville, who by hook or by crook stumble across there. And I'll give her, for instance, too, in the history, of the town itself, not of the individual people, and I think it's funny. I think the most obvious thing is not stated, the fact that the town probably lost its charter, granted, because it was a Black community. And I think that needs to be stated, and I think it's because y'all are the experts, y'all know this when you go to write it down. And so then that's one thing that we often do here is that we have to think, okay, someone may not know what the Civil War is. We really do have to, basically do that. So that would be one of my thoughts, is to go back and, write it for a complete stranger. And you can't assume, unfortunately, we have to assume that people don't know anything. There was, the idea that many of the, corporation charters were lost, because of the store, the chain store kind of thing. But truly, Maryville is a story of race. And, and I think that's not present enough, in this text. And the one thing that I'll say, and again, as we change Judge Field's sign about, is the most important thing has to be in the first paragraph, because we often assume that people are not going to read the entire text. So instead of, when you start talking about the mayor of Maryville, the first thing is to, not his birth date and when he was born and who he married, but basically say, so-and-so was the mayor of Maryville from so-and-so to such and place, he gave his heart and soul, whatever, to the community. And then you go back, sort of like a newspaper article, putting the most important things in the first paragraph, so that if only people read the first paragraph, they get the summation. They may not have read all the information about who he married, and how many children they had and stuff like that. So I do think a lot of that's one thing that we can offer is, when y'all go back to do it, I think it's all there. And I do think, and the wealth is certainly from the different family members, that everyone knows their ancestors, but I do think there needs, and this is my opinion, that there needs to be a uniform voice, that after these are all compiled, someone has to go through and fix them. Because I noticed some are in the past tense, some are in the present tense, and sometimes tense even switches, within a thing there. So those are the kind of things, I think the content is wonderful. I think what we can do is maybe help shape it so that the most obvious things are brought forward. And then I'm not sure if any of my co-commissioners have other suggestions based on what they've read as well too. And Wilmot.
Yes, I'm very happy to see this kind of effort moving forward, telling of a story that I'm very happy to see this kind of effort by African-American people and an African-American community moving forward to tell the story of how they caused that town to grow and all of the travails that it had to go through in order to grow and persist. these things need to be known and understood as well as Harlan has indicated. I am hoping, I want to express the hope that you will take the opportunity to highlight the work of Ernest Everett Just. Dr. Just was not an ordinary scientist. He is sometimes referred to as a god of science, an Apollo of science, a founder of cell biology, a whole area of science in which which the world has benefited from. And to know that that started there in Maryville can help a lot of young people to just decide that they want to be scientists, that they want to know more, rather than sit around doing things that are destructive. But the only way we can benefit from our stories is if we tell them, and you're starting in that direction. I would recommend that the commission accept it as the material provided as good information to be used in the future in the best possible way to highlight the story of Maryville.
Agreed. Do any of the other commission members want to speak to give either suggestions or encouragement? And
went longer than I expected.
right. And if you speak into the microphone, Angela, thanks.
No, I think this is a wonderful endeavor. I would encourage just being in the business of exhibitions and displays. And as Harlan mentioned earlier, is to make the point as quickly as possible on each one of the plaques. But my question is, has the city and considered the possibility of contracting with an exhibits designer for all of these plaques? Because there has to be cohesion. And if there is the opportunity for digital, that's the person, that's the go-to person. And y'all have worked with exhibits designers before. I mean,
To answer your question,
certainly.
Jason, he
Crossman.
did Crossman. He did mention that,
Great.
and hopefully we'll talk about it more on June the 14th.
Mhm.
He made that suggestion. He said there are resources that the city has used in the past, and that would be available to us to kind of pull everything
I
together.
would really encourage it. First of all, because it provides you with sort of an outside eye
That's right.
to respond to what Harlan was talking about, because it all does have to be written
Mhm.
for the person. You have to just assume they know nothing,
Exactly.
not even where they're located.
Yes.
So,
I was told if somebody reads the information 50 years from now, they should be able to understand exactly what you're saying.
Exactly.
And we would like, Mr. Chairman, we would like a recommendation just to kind of give us a guide of just approximately how many words could we try to limit it to?
I wouldn't do that right now.
You wouldn't do that?
I mean, I'm going to disagree with Harlan
Okay.
too on this front.
Okay.
I would keep the text where you have it now
Uh-huh.
until you determine where the plaques are going to be and how they're going to be displayed, whether they are digital or actual fixed plaques,
Mhm.
or however you choose to design the space, both interior and exterior.
Okay.
Because the two have to make sense with each other.
Yes.
And on top of that, there have to be sort of wayfinders,
Mhm.
how you want people to progress through the spaces to tell the story.
Yes.
Because you
Right.
don't want them to come in backwards. You don't
Mhm.
want them to come in sideways.
Mhm.
Or if you do, if there are multiple entrances, you have to be prepared for that, which means that things may have to be repeated.
Yes.
Right. And,
So I would just think about it
Mhm.
from the holistic perspective of the
Yes.
space, both interior and exterior,
Mhm.
and an exhibits designer can do that for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
right. And then and again, I think we can help suggest with that kind of stuff. And again, I think lead with the story of Maryville and then go to the people within Maryville. And again, and I will say, if and we're often in the business here of trying to save words. And since so many of these people are related, I would make sure that maybe the information is in one plaque, is not reproduced again in another one, when words really convey. Since I see that sometimes because they're related, you see some of the same information in one as in another. That's just, I guess, a tip of maybe how to save words, because when it does come down, format unfortunately is going to drive this. But I do think and we are here to help you so that once this is all ready to go, then we come here for a final meeting, that there's editing by committee is really slow work, and so then, like I said, if stuff, and I'm more than willing, and Dale Teeling and I had the same 12th grade English, we discovered the same 12th grade English high school teacher who would be proud of us today of catching commas and stuff. And I will say too, that sometimes only a last name is given and not a first name. You try to be consistent with that. A variety of things too. Some things are in quotes. We don't know where the quotes come from. So, like I said, give him land, give him houses. This is under, I think it's referring to Thomas Miller under Mary Richardson Moses. It's the kind of thing that if is it in quotes, it's good to know where it's from. And I will say that the stuff, Mary Matthews just obviously deserves the largest amount. But then the other Mary, it seems to be more about, so many names: Mary Richardson, Moses, Bowen, Taft, Gettings. And Mr. Gettings, we don't have his first name. And these are just small editorial things that probably take time to try to figure out, and so then if all of this done is like preloaded beforehand, then we can do it too. And as, as interesting as her grandfather is, we want her story. So my thought is, this actually seems more about her antecedents than it does about her. And while it's an incredibly backstory, and then someone's very diplomatic in saying that Christopher Columbus Bowen has an intriguing background. As we all know, many of us know he was a bigamist, whatever. So, my thought is, give us the facts, but if it's not germane, and it's terrible that this is so interesting, but, my suggestion would be, focus it on the two Marys, on the people that made Maryville, Ashleyville what it is, and help explain, difference between Ashleyville and Maryville, the different sides of the community. But truly, it is a story of race, of African Americans achieving something wonderful in a terrible environment, and then this charter being pulled. And we're not here to pull punches. We have to tell the truth, because again, the cliche, if we don't tell the truth, we'll repeat it. So, I mean, these are suggestions that we have, and before the next meeting, if we do come up for stuff, if you want to send it to me for an editorial eye, but I love Angela's suggestion of having an outsider designer. And, the plaque that we approved at the last meeting for the workhouse, the city has engaged a firm, to lay it out, to put the images in a certain way. And they're the ones that pretty much dictated, what the word limit should be. But then it gets fun of trying to, put the really important stuff up first. So does anyone else? Yeah, council member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of y'all for being here this afternoon. So I think that building on the comments that we heard today, we need to see this as a start, the beginning part of all of this. If you haven't been out, as to what Councilmember Warren has suggested, if you haven't been out here, you really do need to go to this park. It's under construction. There is Higgins Pier, is just about maybe a half a mile down from this location. We have Charlestown Landing, and in between all of these is going to be the new county park that's been in the works for several years. So this corridor of piers, parks, landings along Old Town Road is going to change the complexity of West Ashley significantly. The vistas that Councilmember Waring talked about is the views of Charlestown Landing are really breathtaking, but it's also, there's a point, a sort of a peninsula that juts out This gives you the most panoramic view of the city of Charleston from a different perspective than you would have if you were on James Island or in other parts of West Ashley. It's a different feel to it. And you can feel the history connection between old Peninsula of Charleston and what West Ashley meant to the Peninsula of Charleston when you're out there. And to your point, Mr. Chairman, that I think we just need to emphasize this as well, that this facility is going to be used not just for kids to come to play. This is not one of those playgrounds. It's a park. And it's going to be a venue, which I suspect will be visited by many people for different types of events. So we have an opportunity to tell the world the story of this, in which you said earlier, that first paragraph is the hook. There's the punch that you need to grab someone's attention. So hopefully that when they read that first few lines, they're interested to hit that button to get to the digital part of it. So they'll be more interested and more informed as to what's also the rest, as someone said, the rest of the story. So we want to take this opportunity to bring in the experts that we need to bring in, and just sort of outline this a little bit more. And it will be a work in progress. I can't see this anything else than the starting point that you all brought this to us, but we need to make sure that we follow through with this. I think the text is wonderful. I love Diane's book, by the way. I've always learned a little bit more by being in this chair. So let's keep the ball rolling. Let's just start getting this thing pushed out. How far along, how much longer do we have for the construction, you think? It's
supposedly in August, it's supposed to be ready.
Yeah.
So, but let me say this. You should never let me get back to the microphone, but Ms. Brown was right in that how you tell the story. There's going to be a walking trail that goes around this park, and you may not enter at the same point. So that was key. It'd be great, I think, if this committee could get a copy of the site plan in between now and your next meeting. And the second thing is that I know Diane and I have talked about this, and Donna Jacobs, a historic corridor between the former town of Maryville, Ashland Plantation, Charlestown Landing. There's a lot of history there in the span of probably less than a mile. You know, a little bit further back was the old German internment camp off of St. Andrews Boulevard. So maybe that's another project you all could think about, a historic corridor in particular on St. Andrews Boulevard. I don't know where you want to start it, whether it's at the old township of Maryville going all the way through the birthplace of South Carolina.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this committee will probably entertain a motion, saying that we receive this, we encourage it, we look forward to it. But before we do something like that, I'd be curious if y'all have any specific questions, for us. We laud your work, and we probably will pass a motion in a minute to specifically laud your work. But if you have any other specific questions for us, that since we're all assembled now.
No, actually, you answered many of our questions this evening, and we will follow your recommendations and do the revisions and perk it. And we would like to just send it back to you for your review and also any suggestions you may have. I do have a copy of one is the building. This is the building. This is the building.
I will share. So why don't I put this up here for people to look at when they want to. So I don't want to prime the pump, but does someone want to make a motion that say that we accept this information? Shall I make a motion that we accept this information, that we applaud your efforts, and we are here to help you in any way to get this really worthwhile project done as speedily and as historically accurate and as user-friendly as possible. So that's my motion.
Second.
You have a second? Any discussion? call for a vote. Dale, sorry, I'm really fast.
I'm certainly in favor of the motion. I'd like to know, though, are we now waiting on things to come to us in a different format, or to understand what formats they hope to use? Or are we waiting on them, or are they going to wait on us?
No, I think we're waiting on the Ashleyville, Maryville people assembled here
Good.
to take our suggestions, work with the city, maybe after the June 14th meeting, having some sense of idea of the formats. It will be, will it be digital? Will it be, will it be wood? Will it be whatever? And then to come back to us with a more streamlined version so that when it does come up for approval, we don't have to, do a lot of small little editing that'll be maybe, more streamlined.
And I would add to that, just as Councilmember Waring mentioned, that when it does come back, that there's an actual layout of where these signs are going to be, because it's going to help the commission understand what you're trying to convey in each one of the plaques, so that there's no confusion or rewrites or whatever at that point. I mean, I would hope there's a clear sort of map out of what's in the building, what's on the outside of the building, how people are going to traverse the space, and what information you want them to have along the way. That will be really key to sort of focusing each of the plaques to what you want it to achieve.
And the city staff are there to help you with that, like Jason Kronsberg, and then consultants, that's something that they understand. And what we do, just to parenthetically add to that, is, we try to put ourselves to be the outside objective person coming upon this. And that's, so we're not here to say yay or nay. We're here to try to help, like I said, envision what a stranger would look at when they see it, and that's what our role is. Because again, we see y'all as the experts, on the history. So any more discussion on this resolution, Dale?
I went ahead and did a little editing to it, and if it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, you approve, I'd simply hand it to one of their representatives, and they can use it as they will.
I'd be glad to add mine to it as well, too. If you can read my handwriting, that's one thing and again, but you'll see, but again, I will say that if you do have questions about it, just scan it and email me, and the people can do it too. But you'll see again that a lot of my things are, it should be capitalized. I mean, little things like that. But anyway, I'd be glad to hand mine over as well, with the apologies for my bad handwriting. So any more discussion on the resolution of the motion we have in front of us? All in favor, say. Anyone opposed? I guess not. So again, we applaud you for your work. And like I said, we truly are here to help you get it done. And if we're asking questions, it's, we're trying to be the outsider to figure out, because we want that story told, and we want it told, as clearly and as concisely as possible. So thank you all for being here. And we have nothing else on the agenda. So if there is a motion that we, okay, and any debate on that one? So, okay, thank you all for coming. And there's a map up here, and there's also an image of the building. And like I said, I will hand over my edited version.
I bet you're